Today we're going to be talking about if 7-on-7 is ruining football and why I feel 7-on-7 is one of the worst things that athletes can do in the off-season in some cases. So first thing I want to talk about with 7-on-7, you guys, is going to be the coaching within 7-on-7. Now, I don't think all 7-on-7 coaches are bad. I don't think all 7-on-7 programs are bad, but a lot of times you get a lot of dudes that maybe aren't the most well-versed in football. So like if you're in a situation where you're playing on a 7-on-7 team and the coach who's calling plays is not maybe, an ex-quarterback, an offensive coordinator, a head coach for a high school, and he's just some guy that doesn't have a ton of experience, and the play concepts that you guys are running are unrealistic. They're not isolating defenders. They're like 7-on-7 plays with a million different crossing routes. That's going to be a total waste of your time, because the whole goal of 7-on-7 is to prepare you for 11-on-11. That's why 7-on-7 was created in the first place. It's not even close to what it is nowadays. Nowadays, it's all about hype and tournaments, how many followers you can get from going to certain tournaments. You guys, I'm telling you right now, if you are in a situation where the program, or the playbook I should say, is not realistic, you need to get out of that situation. Your coach doesn't know what he's doing. He's calling stupid plays just to win tournaments, and honestly, at the end of the day, nobody cares about the amount of tournaments that you win. Now, there are a lot of other coaches out there, and I say this just to warn you. I'm not saying this to discourage anybody who's in this situation, but there are a lot of coaches out there who are just in it for the check, right? So the 7-on-7 practices, the travel expenses, the uniforms, all that stuff starts adding up. It's a huge financial investment, especially if you're playing on a team that's not in like California, Texas, or Florida, where there's tons of tournaments all the time. You're having to travel all over the place. So it's a big investment. And obviously those coaches are not going to invest their time just for the hell of it. They obviously want to make some money because it's a business, and that's totally fine. That's totally acceptable to do. But there are a lot of guys in it that will promote themselves as like, oh, I have all these connections in the college football world. I have all these connections with these different coaches. Come play for my team, pay X amount of dollars, and then I'm going to help you get all these connections. But guys, at the end of the day, no coach, no connection is going to recruit for you. Maybe you're already a great football player and a connection can help you get in the door, but at the end of the day, your film and the skills that you possess is what's going to get you that scholarship offer or that D1, D2, whatever recruiting attention that you want. So just be very careful with who you trust on the 7-on-7 team that you play. If it's not realistic concepts, if they're promising a lot but they have a history of not delivering, you should run as far away from that 7-on-7 coach and team. Now, another thing I don't like about 7-on-7 is the lack of emphasis on block training and the higher focus on random training, and I'll explain what both of those mean. Now, one thing I will want to say first is that I don't hate 7-on-7 completely. Like, I think 7-on-7 has a lot of positives, and we're going to get into that later on in the video as to why you should play 7-on-7 in certain cases, but most cases for athletes, and this is at least from my experience, because what I do is I train quarterbacks and wide receivers, and quarterbacks and receivers are obviously like, I guess you'd say the focal point of 7-on-7, right? You need a quarterback, you need receivers to be able to have an offense, then obviously defensive players, etc. But I get a lot of quarterbacks that I train, a lot of receivers that I train that play on XYZ 7-on-7 team, and those teams start in January, guys. It's a grind. It's a long season. It's January all the way until July, right? So that's 6 months, like literally 6 to 7 months of 7-on-7 where you're traveling, you're practicing, etc. Now, like I mentioned, there's two types of training for athletes. You have block training and then you have random training. So block training is where you're focused on a specific skill. So let's say you're a quarterback and you have a really long like throwing motion, right? You need to block train to be able to make that throwing motion shorter. So you need thousands upon thousands of reps in a row of a good throwing habit or a good throwing motion to break that habit. And that goes for any type of skill athletically. You need to stack reps upon reps upon reps. It can be boring at times, but that's how you get better at specific areas that you lack in your game. Now in 7-on-7, it's a very randomized training element, which means that it's very reactionary. And that's totally fine. You need to have that, but I think certain athletes do too much of that and don't focus on their actual skills, so they really don't get any better. And then when 11-on-11 rolls around, they haven't fixed those problems and they're not as efficient. Because guys, you could cheat 7-on-7. 7-on-7, you got 4 seconds to throw the ball, quarterback can't roll out, you could throw these stupid play concepts and dump the ball off on a swing. Like, it's not realistic football in some cases. You can make it realistic, but for the most part, what I've seen, it's not. Now, with random training, like I said, it's a reaction. So you kick the ball and it's like, okay, let's say from a quarterback perspective, and you read a defender, he goes here, okay, I'm going to go and throw over here, but your mechanics are terrible, so you're not building any good habits. Quite frankly, you're stacking bad habit upon bad habit upon bad habit, and all of a sudden that's just going to be the way you throw the ball, and you're going to be too far gone to be able to break that bad habit. And maybe your high school head coach wants to see you, hey, I need to see you fix this, or maybe a college coach, I need you to fix that, etc. So I think athletes, like, don't play club winner 7-on-7 if you need to improve in those areas. Let's talk about it from a skill position perspective. If you got to get faster, 7-on-7 ain't going to get you faster. It's going to get you better, reading defenses, maybe working against live competition, but like, are you really going to improve your skills to get better at that live competition if all you're doing is just scrimmages, one-on-ones, and 7-on-7? Like, you need to improve your skills first before you're actually going to improve in those areas. So if it were me, and let's say I had a kid, and let's say I wanted him to play 7-on-7, I wouldn't put him in 7-on-7 until the summer, like until he's out of school, June, July, because that's prepping him for the season. January all the way through May, we would be block training the things that he needs to work on, like his speed and agility, putting on size, building strength, building his mechanical habits, whatever it is. Now, some of you might say, well, the 7-on-7 team that I play for, we do all that. We practice twice a week. Well, what are you doing at the practice? Are you actually being coached? Are you being told when you're doing things wrong? Are coaches spending time on the little things, the little details? Are they putting you through a speed development program? Or is your 7-on-7 practice just, hey, let's go run routes, we'll work on plays, then we'll scrimmage, we do that once a week, and then we play tournaments on the weekends? Guys, it's a grind of a schedule, and most athletes don't understand the amount of reps and the amount of time it takes to block train a habit to break that habit. You will not break your bad mechanical habits by just playing 7-on-7. Now, before we get into the other aspects of 7-on-7 that I don't like, and some aspects of 7-on-7 that I do like, if you are a quarterback or wide receiver watching this, and you would like to train with myself and my staff of coaches this offseason, we are going to be traveling out to 15 different cities across the entire U.S. for 2-day long QB and wide receiver training camp. So guys, check out that very first link in the description below. If you'd like to sign up, we're going to be coming out to San Francisco, California, Orlando, Florida, Phoenix, Arizona, Charlotte, North Carolina. Then we'll be coming out to Austin, Texas, Las Vegas, Nevada, Seattle, Washington, Newark, New Jersey, Chicago, Illinois, Birmingham, Alabama, Houston, Texas, Boston, Massachusetts, Columbus, Ohio, Boise, Idaho, and finishing off the tour in Los Angeles, California. So guys, if you want some more information, again, very first link in that description below. We'd love to have you there. Now, the next thing that I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of with 7-on-7, and why I feel 7-on-7 in some ways might be ruining high school football and even middle school football, is just like kind of the unsportsmanlike culture that it develops. Now, I don't think this is every 7-on-7 program, but it's a lot of the things that are heavily publicized in this like 7-on-7 social media world, right? So you see kids all the time doing these, celebrations that are extremely disrespectful. And I mean, honestly, you're even seeing it in college and NFL today, where, you got different, players like pointing guns at other players. Like, obviously it's with their hands, but like, that's extremely disrespectful, you guys. And then they're getting flagged for it. And the amount of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, excessive celebration penalties, even ejections that I've seen just in high school sports in the last couple years since 7-on-7 has gotten mega popular is it's kind of concerning, if I'm being totally honest. And I think it starts with that, and I think 7-on-7 sometimes can develop that type of culture. Now, I'm all for everybody having fun. I'm all for everybody celebrating, because playing football, you should have fun. But I think it's on the coaches to make sure that that's fun, but it's not a disrespectful type of fun, because that's not how the game is supposed to be played, and that can turn away a lot of people who are maybe thinking about playing football, hesitant to playing football, but they see that type of culture, and maybe parents don't want to be a part of that, etc. And just take it from me, like our brand that we've made content through for the last 5 years, it's always been very respectful. It's never been trying to embarrass people and trying to make people look bad, and clips from the camps that we do where we'll post athletes doing certain things. We'll never post a clip where an athlete looks terrible and we're trying to embarrass him, because we want everybody to feel like, hey, we love football just as much as everybody else, and we want everybody to want to play football. Now, I think that 7-on-7 culture turns away a lot of people, and especially a lot of people who are new to football. And again, for these 7-on-7 teams that are all about the money sometimes, that's a bad look, because you're losing out on business. So I think that's another thing that I feel 7-on-7 is kind of ruining football in terms of just the culture that it creates. I wish football would get back to being about football, being about the work, being about the execution of the game, not so much about the hype and the gear and the flash and who can top whose celebration. Now, I promise we will get to some positives about about 7-on-7, but I want to make sure I explain all the negative sides of 7-on-7 to you, just so you guys know what you're getting into with playing 7-on-7, or know at least what to look for. Because if the 7-on-7 team that you're looking at, that you're playing for, doesn't check all these boxes that I'm talking about, it's probably a good situation to be in, and you want to play for that team. Now, this is a big one, I feel, because like, what is the goal of 7-on-7? 7-on-7, the goal is to get you ready for 11-on-11. It's develop, I guess you could say good habits, developing game situations. But the thing I hate about 7-on-7 is the club circuit, where nobody's building any chemistry with their teammates. Like, there's a reason why in college they don't play 7-on-7 and you don't play on teams or do scrimmages, whatever, with other players from other teams, right? You play with your own team. Like, a spring ball starts, you're trying to develop chemistry. Winter workouts, you're trying to develop chemistry. Quarterbacks, wide receivers, we're trying to develop a good relationship so we can perform when it actually matters, which is 11-on-11. And 11-on-11 is what matters, guys. Full pads, actual real varsity football is what college coaches want to see. So that's what we're trying to prepare ourselves for. So I think it's a total waste of time if you're a QB, or if you're a wide receiver, or even a running back in some cases, and you're not playing on the same team as your teammates. You guys are all on different 7-on-7 teams. You might even be playing against each other. How does that benefit us in the summer, you guys? How does that benefit us in the fall when we actually have to play actual competition? So if you're a QB and you want to play 7-on-7, great, but play with your receivers. Your receivers, and you want to play 7-on-7, play with your quarterback, because that chemistry that you develop is what's going to help you out in 11-on-11, which makes everybody look good, and that's how we all can ultimately end up getting recruited. I think a lot of people play 7-on-7, especially in the winter, for the wrong reasons. They play it just for the hype. How many Instagram followers can I get if I make this play and overtime posts it, or pylon post it, whatever? Guys, that's not what the game's about. You need to focus on developing good relationships and good chemistry with your teammates. Now let's talk about some positives of 7-on-7. So I think for 7-on-7, the first positive is just like the general skill building that comes from 7-on-7 in a live game setting. Like I've mentioned earlier in this video, I don't want anybody to think that I'm like completely bagging on 7-on-7. There are just a lot of aspects that I don't like about it, and I don't like what it has turned into. I think maybe we had this conversation like 7-8 years ago. It's a totally different conversation. 7-on-7 is like the greatest thing ever, but I think there have been a lot of bad people who have kind of, I guess, intermingled into the 7-on-7 space that have made things very, very bad for a lot of athletes and waste a lot of athletes' time, whether they want, like notoriety for winning a championship, whether they want money, whether they want fame, whatever it is, right? But there are positives. And the positive number one, like I said, is skill building in a live scenario. So for quarterbacks, what's better than working on reading coverages and reading defenses than passing plays versus a defensive secondary? Best thing you can possibly do for your football IQ and making reads. Now again, like I talked about, quarterbacks need to block train certain mechanical habits to make them more efficient with their throws, because there's no benefit. Like if you can read a defense perfectly, but you can't hit shit for a throw, like guys, like that doesn't make any sense. You have to be able to hit the throws, and you have to be able to read the defense. So it's a combination of both, but that's good for QBs who need to improve that aspect. Now let's talk about receivers. You're working routes versus different coverages. You're getting comfortable working releases, moves at the top of the route versus different coverages. That's so beneficial. Defensive side of things, DBs, it's one of the best things for man coverage that you could possibly do. Linebackers, if you need to work on your coverage skills, one of the best things you could possibly do. So there are benefits to 7-on-7. Do not get me wrong. You just have to understand what you were trying to improve on specifically as an athlete. Be honest with yourself. And how you can be honest with yourself too is ask coaches on your actual high school team or your middle school team or whatever team you're on. Ask them, coach, where do I need to improve? And if he says, hey, you need to get more game reps, play 7-on-7. Hey, you need to be more accurate. You got to work on your throwing mechanics. Okay, that's what we should focus on first. 7-on-7 will always be there, and it will always be there in the summer with your team. But that skill building element is a positive side of it. Now, also, fellas, if you are a high school football player, one of the key elements to getting recruited is promoting yourself on social media. You have to put your, huddle highlight tape on social media. Get your highlight tape in front of college coaches, and the hard part is finding college coaches to actually send it to on X, because there's so many different players on there. How can you actually stand out? So you should be reaching out to them, following them, interacting with their posts. So if you guys would like a list of over 500 different college coaches that you can contact, check out that second link in the description below. We developed a new website called First Down Coaching, where you can get access, like I said, to a list of 500 different coaches. Their Twitter information is right there, and you can easily follow, interact, and start your recruiting process with them. Now, another benefit that a lot of people don't really really talk about with 7 on 7 might be like the personal branding element of 7 on 7. So I think we would all be naive to think that NIL doesn't affect high school sports these days. I feel like it does. NIL, for those of you that don't know, is like name, image, and likeness. That's the thing that helps college athletes get paid. And, you know, say what you want about NIL. I have my opinions about it. That's for a different video. But, you know, obviously athletes that have a bigger social media presence and a bigger personal brand will, chances are, probably make more money with NIL because of sponsorships or because of people just wanting that type of notoriety coming to their school. So 7 on 7 can help you build that if you're playing for a team that maybe plays in these high exposure type tournaments. So like, you know, OT7, Pylon, like those types of big tournaments where there's a lot of publicity, there's a lot of cameras. You know, you make one big play, Overtime posts you on their social media, they tag you in it, that might get you a couple thousand new followers. Now, am I one to tell you to chase followers and chase fame and chase notoriety? No, because at the end of the day, if you're not good, you're not good. If you're good, you're good. If you're a good enough football player to play at the next level, you will be able to play. Now, should you be playing at the collegiate level with the thought process of like, okay, I'm gonna go to this school because they're gonna pay me this in NIL? Like, you never know what could happen. You never know what could change. But if you're a good football player generally nowadays, because of how the college payment system works, like colleges can flat out pay athletes now. It doesn't have to be sponsorship like how it used to be. And these booster clubs can make something called a collective. You guys maybe heard like Deion Sanders talk about this. And I think this is the problem with NIL, but these boosters can pull all their money together. Everybody chips in $100,000 and they could pay some recruit $1 million to come to their school. And that recruit may not even have a personal brand. He may not even have a ton of followers. So at the end of the day, like, your film doesn't lie. You have to be a great football player, but I can see the benefits of being on a high exposure 7 on 7 team to building a personal brand if that's your goal. Because obviously, well, what are we doing right now? We're making videos, we're a brand trying to get more notoriety. So I'm not anti that. I just think that you got to make sure that the skills and the game also backs up the fame and all that stuff that you want.